In this week's LEGO City update, I'll be beginning the construction of the future harbour. Firstly, I'm removing a fraction of the front section of my LEGO City, since I'll now be cutting the table, because the harbour will be lowered in comparison to the rest of the wood plate where the city is placed on. Fortunately enough, I only had to make one single cut, because that was enough for me to now already remove this front part of the table. At first I was a bit nervous about sawdust now covering the city, but as you could see I was vacuuming while I was cutting and therefore everything was totally fine. For the part where the harbour will be placed on, I'm now using these adjustable table legs, so I don't have to worry about small gaps of half a brick or half a plate that I otherwise cannot fill. Although they were a bit more expensive than my normal pillars I have beneath the table, I think this was a good investment. Of course, these table legs by themselves wouldn't be stable enough, and therefore I now connected the lower table of the harbour with the upper table. I mean, the solution is a bit improvised, but it absolutely gets the job done. And having that now done, it's finally time to quickly rebuild the city. And then it's already time for me to start with the first module of the harbour. When it comes to the foundation, I'm now using black plates. I know it's a bit weird at first, but wait until I'll add the trans light blue tiles on top of those plates, because then you'll understand why I've chosen this specific combination of color. When it comes to the harbour itself, I'm building this wall that disappears in the water out of 3 different colors. Firstly, for the lower section, I'm using a combination of earth green and dark bluish gray, because that's the area of the wall where it's actually wet, and with an increasing distance to the water, I'm now using light bluish gray because that's the dry part of the landing stage, where splashes of water no longer reach up. Now, this is probably already my favorite part of the entire harbour section, these tires I've added. If you've ever been at a harbour, there are always tires, so the boats and ships don't crash into the concrete when docking. What I've done in the meantime is I've started covering all those studs up with a mixture of still a few remaining studs as well as tiles, without a specific pattern of tiling however. For the wall reaching up to the upper platform of the LEGO City, I'm using a mixture of masonry bricks, normal plates, as well as those small 1x1 studs, all in light bluish gray, which is the exact same color as the rest of the dry harbour. What I can always do is add a bit of vegetation, maybe a few leaves that grow up this wall, because at the moment it's obviously still a bit boring and too grey. Now I'm adding stairs so we can actually reach the harbour. I'm not sure if I'll add a railing at some point. For now I'm leaving the stairs like this. And now it's time for the water. I've already talked about the watercolor at the beginning of building this module, and now you can see why I've chosen black as a foundation, because the combination of those trans light blue tiles with a black underground actually look like there's deep water, just as it should be in a harbour and at sea. I've purposely decided not to create a transition onto a more shallow water, because normally at harbours you immediately have deep waters. Here you can see once again why I absolutely love the tires I've added. I think they, in combination with the wet and dry area I've added, are probably my 2 favorite features of the harbour at this point. For the railing on top, I'm not quite sure if I'm gonna leave it like this. For now I'm using these normal fence pieces, but if you ask me, it's a bit too bulky and I might even change it in future updates, but for now that's totally fine. I just wanted to add some sort of contrast in order to experiment with different colors, and black was absolutely fine, because the only other part where I've added black are actually those tires we've just added. And now when it comes to adding the first details, you can see why I'm not too worried about the whole area looking too grey at the moment, because as soon as we have a few minifigures, a bench and so on, it just adds life and becomes more interesting. What I will, however, definitely need to do is buy more fitting minifigures. So far I only have a fisherman as well as this captain right there, and I mean that's definitely not enough. When it comes to the first boats and ships, I'm adding variations to the watercolor as well as details. I think I'll now show you all that live in the city. So first of all, when it comes to the ships that are anchored in the harbour, look what I have right here. This is the small LEGO Ideas boat that was available quite some time ago. And when it comes to the size, I'm actually quite satisfied with that, and might even take that as an example. However, what I definitely do not like are these large white panels that absolutely block the view onto the rest of the city behind it. However, if ships are anchored, I can show you a picture right now, it's actually extremely unrealistic that the sails are opened, because normally they are rolled in together and tucked away and you only have the empty masts. And now look what I have right here. I'll use all those small strings and cords to now remove all the sails and then only add strings, because that's what you normally have if sailboats are stationed in a harbor, as you could see in the picture earlier. The next up, so many of you commented that I should add an underwater area right here. However, I'm not going to do that because of one simple reason. I need to reach the part down here because that's where I have a fraction of my bricks stored and I need to reach that area. What I, however, will do is, since you all wanted me to build a pirate mock, I'll add an underwater section to that pirate mock, but that's not a topic for this video. When it comes to the first harbor module, I'll definitely need to find a way to integrate that into the rest of the city. Specifically, this part right here, I'm not satisfied at all with that. And what I was thinking is actually creating a cross section right here and then maybe adding some sort of sewage system and just building the rest of the city down to this part right here. So I'll extend this whole section and then add everything that's beneath the city underground in this cross section. I also thought you might be interested in that. That was my very first experiment that I've designed before actually building the module, obviously. But this thing right here probably took me about 8 hours. Not building time, of course, but the design work. First of all, I had to figure out that I want to have this black foundation and then place the trans light blue tiles above them. Then I experimented with a transition from the water onto the wet brickwork and then onto the light bluish gray above. Also, when it came to the tires, I initially had the rims placed inside and then clicked them onto this pin right here, but it didn't look realistic, and then I decided to remove them and only have the rubber part of the tires and then simply hang them on to these pins right here. Next up, this was my experiment for the wall behind there. I can remove those things right here and then you can actually get an idea of why I've decided against that, because although in some parts I think the dark tan might add a bit of contrast and also color and look better, in total, when I add details, a bit of vegetation and so on, and actually have ships placed in front of this wall, then at some point I think it gets a bit too overwhelming and there's too much going on that actually draws away attention from the ships, which should be the focus point of the harbor. Since you guys keep asking when the next Moonbase update will be uploaded, I'm currently working on the next video. I think I should be able to finish it within the next week or so. I'm currently building a landing pad, a fuel station and so on. I'm really looking forward to finishing that update. So you still have to wait about 1 week and then it's finally time for the next Moonbase update. So with that being said, that's it for this week's LEGO City update. I really hope you enjoyed and I'll see you again in the next one.